David, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Evan. Good to be here.
Yeah, I am happy to be talking to you again. In the Peopleverse, we're people first. That's our tagline. And so I want to talk about you. I want to talk about your passion, where it comes from, how you got to where you are in your trajectory in the building industry. So let's talk about your origin story. Where did you find your initial spark?
Well, I think where I found as far as like being a people person, I think I found my initial spark really in watching the mentors that went ahead of me, the guys that kind of got me into this industry, and kind of the value that I saw from working hard and from really applying yourself and really where you could get from doing that. I think that one of the things that I would say that makes me a people person is kind of the not knowing what to expect when you go into a social situation, whether that's walking into an architect's office or working a booth at a trade show or whatever it is, a networking event. It's kind of like the thrill of doing improv. I imagine anyway. I haven't done improv. That's kind of what I hear from people who have. It's not knowing what is going to come at you is kind of an exciting thing because it really ends up showing you what you really know about your product and about your industry when you haven't had time to prepare for what somebody's going to ask you. So I think that in a way helps to build confidence really in what you're doing.
I totally agree with that. I think there is a level of improv to the situations that we put ourselves in the building industry. We're working with people we've never worked with before. We're working with teams of people. Like as a designer, I'll show up to our architectural review committee or just a stakeholder meeting, and there's going to be different people in the room, and you never know what is going to come up during that meeting. It's very interesting to me because there are definitely, from the architect's perspective, there are architects who love that situation, and there are architects who will run away from that situation if it's ever presented to them, if they could, right? So it is kind of an interesting analogy that you make to it being like improv, because you don't know how the audience will react to your jokes in that case, right? But in this case, I understand the way that you're framing that because I am one of those people who it kind of doesn't matter what comes up. You're reacting in the moment. You're sharing the stuff that is top of mind, the information that makes the most sense in the moment. And I guess one of the superpowers of being in that situation is just to ask lots of questions too, right? You don't have to have all of the answers on the spot in the moment.
Sometimes the best thing to say is, let me get back with you on that, don't be afraid of saying that, right? I've had to say that so many times that I feel like it's just having the humility to say, you know what, I don't know, but I'm going to find out and I'll get back with you. I think that's really important.
I talk about that quite often as well. It's like the line in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, the game show, right? I'm going to phone a friend. Even if you don't have the answer right then, how could you have all the answers to everything? You can't, right? But chances are, somebody who is the right person to answer that question, or at least can get you on the right path to answering that question. So
absolutely.
You talked about kind of this situation of being a people person. Who inspires you or inspired you?
Who inspires me currently? I think of people like that I admire. Russell Brand is one of those people. Eckhart Tolle, Brene Brown, and we talked about some of this before. But the Iceman, Wim Hof. Some of these people, and I think what I appreciate about these people and what inspires me is their authenticity. You get this real sense that they're the same person off camera, so to speak, as they are in person. And I think that's really inspiring to me. It's what I aspire to. I really want to be that kind of person that I'm the same in any situation. You're going to get the same version of me no matter where we run into each other. So those are some of the people that I feel like inspire me currently. I feel like some of the people that inspired me in the past, and I've mentioned this many times, but was my uncle who really kind of got me into this industry. And I think what inspired me about him was him and my father. I mean, they were both in the glass industry. My dad I worked less with my dad than I did with my uncle, but what inspired me about them was just the willingness to do whatever it took to get the job done. And really seeing them work so hard and be exhausted at the end of the day, and seeing that that was not something to be afraid of. As a young person, 15 or 14, however old I was young, 14 or 15 years old, and seeing that that was something to embrace. That was inspirational to me, to see their work ethic,
Yeah.
and just how much blood, sweat, and tears they put into it.
Maybe this is definitely a related question. Maybe it's a similar answer. Maybe it's a different altogether. But who would you say your heroes are?
Well, I mean, I think that is a fairly similar answer for me. It's some of these people that are both authentic and I guess carry some sense of transparency about them. That they're not holding up some facade, not trying to impress. And that's the sense that I get from some of those people that I mentioned, the Eckhart Tolle,
Yeah.
Brene Brown, even Ricky Gervais, the comedian. I mean, like, uh, you get what you get, and that's the real person, right?
Yeah, it's kind of unapologetic in that sense, right? You remind me of the work that Brene Brown did on vulnerability, right? She did
Yeah.
I've listened to her on podcasts, and when you talk about that level of vulnerability, I think that also translates back into where we started the conversation, where you go into a situation not knowing what's going to come into it or out of it, and just it reminds me of being a designer, and there's lots of different roles in the architecture office. There's
Right.
project managers, there's technical architects, there's design architects, there's specifiers, there's interiors librarians and admin, and like there's just so many people on the team to make a design project happen, and that's only in the architect's office. Then there's all the other disciplines and consultants and everything. And somebody made an offhanded comment one day and just said, "Oh, designers, you have all the fun. You do all the fun work." And when you pin stuff up on the wall for other people to critique, comment, give advice, there's a lot of different scenarios that happen during that critique.
Yeah.
It's a very vulnerable state to
No
be in.
doubt.
And when I think about the work that Brene did and kind of the authenticity that you're talking about,
Mhm.
you're basically putting something up on the wall and defending it or seeking input from others in a very vulnerable state, because it's a half-baked idea. It's almost always like such a baby, and babies have to be protected, right? On
Yeah.
some level, like they're very fragile. And so to put things up on the wall and to put it on display and to have open comment on it is a very vulnerable state. And talk about not knowing what's going to happen. Like this is that, to me, is when you actually build relationships with people, whether it's intentional or not. It kind of isn't at that stage, but it happens through the process. And I guess that kind of gets back to what you were talking about, where you go into these situations, you look forward to going into the situations because it gives you a chance to be authentic, be your authentic self, have open conversations, not necessarily have all the right answers, build something over time with those people. And that, to me, is, I mean, that's something that, as more and more technology has been introduced into the building industry, it's something that I feel like we've gotten farther and farther away from, which is, because we can just go into our zone. We can just go into our computer. We can go onto our phone. We can look things up. And so that tight connection that people used to have with a product specialist or an expert on something, that phone is picked up less and less over time. And that's something that we really see as a deficit in the building industry.
Absolutely. I wanted to touch back on something you said though too about building something with people, and that's something that is um, it's kind of lost in today's society. I feel like of building an actual personal relationship, and people want to do business with people. Products are great and they're shiny and they're exciting and there's cool features to talk about. Um, but at the end of the day, people do business with other people, and building a relationship with somebody that is not focused on shoving a flyer down their throat, shoving a product in their face. What do you think of this?
Yeah.
Um, I think that's so important. And often that step is the step that is skipped with building reps, I think. You can't just waltz into an office carrying a sample and expect somebody to want to give you the time of day, without having made some connection, building some rapport with them before then.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we can sense that, right? It's like it's another sense that we have, which is I kind of gets back to the authenticity aspect that you were talking about, but is this going to be a transaction or is this going to be a relationship? And that is something that you can kind of intuit in these situations, right? Where you can tell how you're being treated or what the intention is of the other individual. And so if the intention you can feel is that they're trying to build versus trying to establish a sales lead and move on, or establish a sale and move on. Those are two very different scenarios. And that's something that you can really sense. It's almost palpable in the real time situation.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the question that we're all wanting to answer is, I can be, or the question that is on the table in any relationship is, can you be trusted? And,
Right.
And when we come in full force, fire hose approach, here's this product, this product, this product, this product. Any projects that you can see these working on, like
Right.
come on,
Right.
like that to me is an immediate, you can't be trusted. Don't come in here again.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a deep question in every relationship is, can I trust this person? And I think that's what, getting back to the vulnerability thing, I think that's why, in conversations, a lot of times I want to quickly get to that vulnerable spot where you're sharing something real. And you can pretty quickly tell whether or not you can trust somebody if they lean in, or if it's just like, well, I got a meeting I got to get to. I want to get out of here, and of course there's time frames. Everybody has constraints, but I think that getting to that vulnerable spot with somebody where you truly create a human connection is so important.
That just makes me think of the amount of distraction that exists, and the most valuable thing we have is our attention. And so if there's a watch going off, or if there's a phone buzzing, and there's so many ways in which those scenarios can get broken up into smaller chunks that through distraction. And that to me is a real world situation that we have to figure out how to navigate better, because it takes away from the ability for people to build relationships, right? If you're constantly distracted, and who isn't, right? So no fault, but it's like, to actually get someone's undivided attention is getting more and more rare, right? So
it is.
That's just, as you're talking about, these are the kinds of things I'm thinking about, because this is one of those times when it's harder and harder to actually deal with that on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, definitely.
You talked about your uncle earlier, kind of taking you under his wing. Was he a mentor for you? Would you call him a mentor?
Definitely. Yeah, in many ways. Like, he gave me opportunities that I would not have otherwise had. He put me in positions that allowed me to fail. And it's funny to say that, it's great for a mentor to do that. I mean, I really thank him for that. I feel like it helped me to grow a lot faster than I would have otherwise, when, was it nepotism? I don't know. Was it all fair that I got some of the opportunities that I did? I don't know, but all I can say is thank you now, because it really helped to shape me, and help me to understand something about relationships and working with people, in a very crash course kind of way. And again, a mentor in that work ethic that I saw in him, that definitely did help to shape me for sure.
A friend of mine is helping do some work around my property, and he is operating an excavator. I can't operate an excavator. I would love to learn how, but I asked him how he learned, and he said, yeah, his old boss, he used to drive a forklift for his old boss, and his boss had an excavator, and he's had no interest in learning he thought it looked way too complicated. It has a lot more levers than a forklift does. And his boss was like, no, you should learn how to use it. And he's like, no, I'm not interested. He's like, no, just start simple. What's the worst thing that could happen? He's like, I could tip it over and break it. He goes, oh, that's what insurance is for, And he just was like blown away that he was given this opportunity to fail. He's like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You know? And he said he would learn how to do something. And then as soon as he learned how to do that, his boss would give him something that looked way scarier to do. And he would say, no, you got to do that now. And he said, I don't want to do that. I'm scared. Yeah. He said, no, again, what's the worst that's going to happen? And so, like, to your point about mentors pushing you, right, to kind of figure it out for yourself. What could your trajectory be? I think those are the best kinds of leaders and mentors in our lives. They're the ones who say, you know, I see what you're capable of. Do you see what you're capable of? Maybe, maybe not, right? And giving you the runway to kind of figure that out.
Yeah, definitely. I love that analogy of trying things or a mentor pushing you to do things that scare you. And absolutely, when I think back on my time in the field working with my uncle, that was a regular occurrence. So whether it was, hey, David, I need you to go up on this, 15-story building, hang out the window from a harness and caulk this window or something. I'm like, what? Like, I don't want to do that. Hey, David, you need to get in this 80-foot, boom lift and go up. I remember working on this project in downtown Richmond, this old tobacco warehouses being changed into apartments and condos. And being on this 80-foot boom lift, I'd never been on something that high before. Like, that doesn't sound that big, but when you are at the end of 80 feet extended all the way out and you're looking down at cars driving around your lift, you're like, oh my gosh, man.
Don't look down.
Yeah, exactly. I just remember like freezing my butt off on this boom lift in the middle of winter, caulking windows, and just like, it sucked at the time. Like it really did. But I did something again, like my uncle gave me like a 5-minute rundown. Here's how you operate the lift. And he said, go. And it's like, you trust me to do this? Like, really?
Right. Right.
Again, yeah, exactly the same type of thing. And, man, and to this day, I love operating heavy equipment because of those experiences. It's so much fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Have there been other mentors in your life that you've sought out?
Yes. And I think the current CEO in our company, Curtis McClamrock, is one of those where I certainly have not sought him out as much as I could have, but he's been a great mentor to me as well, mostly on the leadership side of things and what it means to be a leader, how to lead people. Mm-hmm. So much to learn there still. But he was one of the ones that pushed me to read Brené Brown and to read Extreme Ownership and some of these books by great leaders in their fields. So yeah, I would say definitely has been an impact on me there.
Extreme Ownership, that's Jocko Willink, is that right?
Yes. Dare to Lead is the other one by Brené Brown as well.
Okay, I'll put both of those in the show notes. One of the things that you do incredibly well, and this is a tactic, I assume, on your part, and I'm sure it has a lot to do with just who you are, but you use comedy. You make funny videos that are informational, and you're sharing interesting things through that. Tell me about that.
It's funny because it's not something that I've intentionally done as a tactic. I think I find humor a lot of times in things that most people probably would not find humor in, but whether it's just like a design that makes me scratch my head or something that I'm just trying to wrap my mind around why somebody would have done. And it's like, well, there's an opportunity there to hopefully help my point stick a little bit better in somebody's head by infusing it with a little bit of humor. And I've never intentionally set out to use humor to do that, but it's just, I guess, something that I don't know if it comes naturally or whatever, that I want to make light of a situation for the point of making a point.
I appreciate that. I think it just breaks down barriers and makes it way more approachable, because every moment can't be, or I don't think it should be, a teachable moment, because usually what that brings along with it is some kind of, well, I mean, because you could choose a completely different path. You could say, look, people are doing it wrong, and here's how to do it right. And that would land completely differently than the way that you deliver it. So I want to give people a reason to follow you, to check out what you're doing. I mean, you're putting great content up on LinkedIn. I mean, that's obviously where I see most of it. Mm-hmm. What do you think about just using social media to do things like what you're doing with it? To me, it's kind of fascinating to see, coming from I mean, I was an educator for over 10 years in the university, which is a completely different situation. And now I see people delivering amazing content on social media in very short video form, where you could get more out of that than you can out of a lot of full-time classes in the university.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think our attention spans, going back to like keeping people's attention, our attention spans are so incredibly short. Blame that on McDonald's or on Twitter or on whatever you want to blame it on, but we expect to be able to digest information in small bites now, and I think that is one thing that I think social media does well. I'm not a big fan of social media, quite honestly, but I think it has its place. And I think the reason why I do as much as I do on LinkedIn is because that's the tool that I have at hand, and one that I've found some success with. It tends to be, more professional, obviously, of the social media networks.
Yeah.
I've tried some of the other ones, Evan, and it just didn't click with me. I'm not maybe I'm too old. I don't know, but I'm a TikTok and all these, like, I just can't. I know there's a great business and use case for it, but I can't, I haven't been able to get traction on those like I have on LinkedIn. But really, I'm just trying to use the tools that are available to me. And, I think a lot of times we overthink or overproduce things to the point of, I've struggled with this for a long time of like, if it's not perfect, I don't even want to put it out there. But getting back to the authenticity piece, it's okay to have some ums and uhs and things like that in your videos. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think in some sense, with the inception of things like AI and all these things, we're losing some of that authenticity, and that realness is transmitted through when it's not overproduced, I think.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's a little more human, right? Like that humanity of that nobody's perfect. Absolutely nobody.
Yeah.
And to go through the process it takes to polish things to the point of which they are perfect it's never ending. Right. And I think, there's a YouTuber that I followed for a long time that many, many people have followed for a long time, named Casey Neistat. And Casey's videos, he gets millions and millions and millions of views. And you know what one of his rules is? One take. You get one take. That's one of his main rules. He doesn't do things over. And so if he needs to do it over, it just doesn't make it into the video. And I found that to be really inspiring on some level, because it's like who has time to, I guess it's not who has time, but why go through the pain of creating perfection? Because it's almost unattainable. You could as a designer, I know this very clearly. Like, I could just keep designing. I could design and design and design. And if there were no boundaries on that, if there was no deadline, I would never hit it, right? Because you're just never done. And so good enough, I know some people say good is the enemy of great, right? But the idea here, I think, especially when it comes to scrollable media that really people are flipping through on their phone, and I would rather have it be short, and which I'm bad at doing, short into the here's a podcast to prove it that we're on right now. I would rather have it be short and to the point and be informational quickly and not be perfect than for it take 50 minutes to get to the point. So
on the flip side of that, I think good is enemy of great. I think perfection is the enemy of production in many cases, and I think that you can perfect the heck out of something and it'll never be good enough, like you said, and so you'll never put it out there.
Well, the reason I bring up your approach, like the funny stuff matters to me, because there is a lot of distrust and risk avoidance in the building industry. It's kind of just par for the course nowadays. And the goal of what we're doing at Tech and with this podcast, the Peopleverse, is to build relationships. So in this community, I want everyone to know that we have each other's back. And I'm wondering if you could kind of explore that a little bit. Why is it important for our industry to embrace the idea of relationships?
I think it's important because it's something that's long overdue. I think the changing the perception of building product manufacturers. I think we have We have rightfully earned the reputation of being product pushers. Like
Mm,
we've talked about for a long time, using bribery, using gifts, financial incentives, whatever it is, to get an architect or designer to specify a product. And it's really one-sided. I think it's important that we start changing that perception of having each other's backs, because this is not a one-sided thing. I mean, you can have, like you said, like a one-hit wonder where you gift something to an architect, so they say, "Fine, I'll write you into the spec." Boom, you have a trajectory like that. You get a great project, and then it drops off because it was a one-sided thing. I didn't have the
yeah.
architect's back. I was caring about only about what I got out of something.
Mm.
So I think we have work to do to change the perception of what building product manufacturers and specialists are to the architects.
Maybe you could speak generally to the situation on the building product manufacturer side, because I'm sure this has something to do with it, which is this whole idea of metrics, right? KPIs, and there's what gets tracked kind of is the thing that people are using as the measure of their success. And what you're talking about, I think, is the difference in success between the short term and a longer term relationship and what that could lead to. I mean, is my sense right there? Because I'm not on the sales side, I'm on the design side. So there was something driving that behavior that has led us to where we are now. I mean, and this, again, we're just talking in generalities here, because unfortunately, even with a spectacular product expert, I hold you in that column, you still have others on your side of the table who have contributed to that other bad behavior, the baggage that does exist there. What do you
Sure.
think about all that? Or could you illuminate some of that for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are KPIs. That's a real thing. There's management wants to see that the people in positions like this are doing their job, right? And that comes
Mm,
with, you know, needing to produce a certain number of specs, per month, per whatever it is.
mm-hmm.
And there's some fear there, right? For the rep. Like, I've got to get
Sure.
out and I've got to do whatever it takes to get it done. And I need to do it right now. I need to do it yesterday, in fact. So what's it going to take to make that happen? Um, I think people are coming around to the idea that it is more about people and more about relationships than about using some of the KPIs that have been used in the past, because I don't think they work long term.
Mm,
I'm extremely fortunate to work for a company that doesn't have that strict. You need to produce this number of specs per month per year, otherwise your job is on the line. I mean, that's not the approach here. They're big on putting the right people into the right positions and trusting them and saying, do what you're good at, and the results will show for themselves. And I think that's really important. I think getting the right people in the right positions is really important. Anybody can be a product pusher. Anybody can shove a flyer, across the table to you. It takes a different type of person that in a longer term approach to building a relationship that is going to benefit both people long term. And I think it takes a lot of trust too on management and on those that are higher up in the organization to say, I'm going to trust that what you're doing today is going to reap benefits down the road. I think
mm-hmm.
one of the things that some building product manufacturers may miss is the fact that they want results right now. They want to see that we're in a spec right now. Great, we could be put in a spec tomorrow on a hotel or a multifamily project. We're not going to see that project for 2 years, or a
Right.
year and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
It's about stretching people's perception out. This is a very long-term game. This is not a quick flip kind of thing. You can't
Yeah.
walk into an architect's office and get a sale. That's not what architects do. They don't buy products. And it's something that I think that's another thing that I think needs to be drilled home over and over is architects do not buy products. You don't
Yeah.
sell to architects. So you're not going to go and increase your business. You're not going to increase your or hit your quota, so to speak, your sales quota by
Mm,
going out and seeing 10 architects tomorrow, like you would going out and seeing 10 glass shops or whoever your business channel is.
Yeah, the term we use is service before sales, right? The goal of building the trust, building the relationships, providing service. You never know what you're going to need when you need it until you do as a design professional. And then I need it, and I need it quickly because I've got 1,000 other products that I have to deal with on this project. And if you're that go-to person for me over and over and over again, even if you're not the exact match of what I need for this project, if you're the right person, I'm going to keep coming back to you, and that
Absolutely.
will lead to sales, right? So it really is about service before sales. It's about the people before the products. That's the mantra that we like to talk about.
One of the people that I really admire, Evan, in this industry is Charisse Lakeside, and I think you and Charisse know each other.
I do know her. I know her well.
Yeah. And she really pushes that idea of building product manufacturers being trusted advisors. And I have really taken that, like really tried to internalize that. That is what I want to be. I want to be a trusted advisor so that an architect can come to me and say, hey, I've browsed your website. It doesn't look like you have the exact product we're looking for, but can you tell me where I could get this? Or can you tell me, could you help me work out this issue that I'm having of how to, fit the shower door on this curb, whatever it is. And you can say, absolutely, let's look at it. And we dig into the plans and we figure out a solution. That is what I think building product manufacturers need to be. And that's, I feel like what Tech is really trying to drive home is that it's about trusted relationships. And that's one thing that I love about Tech.
I appreciate you saying that. The idea of having a short list of people on speed dial, right, you can't understate how important that is because of, again, you don't know what's going to come up and when it's going to come up and how soon you're going to need an answer. And if I have a list of trusted people that I can get a hold of, I'm going to use it, right? And you want to be on the other side of that phone call rather than you coming at me, hey, you got a new project, anything that I'll use your brain when I need it. I can outsource that need that I have to an expert right when I need it. I think that's a fantastic model. It's a fantastic relationship to have. It's a very professional, right? We are saying that we stand behind what we say, and that's how trust gets built over time. All of that leads to a better long-term future and trust in the system. And that's our goal, right? Is to put trust back into the system so that we can float all boats and move forward together. So there's so many great themes to talk about in this episode, David. I really appreciate it. I want to put links to you on LinkedIn. I'm going to put to HMI Glass so people can learn more about it. I'm going to put a link to the previous episode that you were on where they can learn more about you. Is there anything else that you want to say to the audience before we wrap it up?
The only thing that I would say is just continue to give us a second chance as building product manufacturers. I think we have a lot to learn, and I think that we are, as new generations come into this, I think people are seeing that maybe the old way doesn't work anymore, and that there is opportunity to create a new path. And keep being vulnerable with us. We need that just as much. I think one of the reasons why I love I'll do these events from time to time where it's like a speed dating event, for lack of a better term, where you sit face to face with an architect or designer and you have 20 minutes to talk about projects and talk about your product and things like that. And one of the things I think is always so impressive to me is how it breaks down barriers. And you realize that titles don't matter, positions don't matter. It's just another person there with you. And that's what, I hope that through these type of interviews, through things like this, that we can continue to break down the barriers. And, if you want to contact me about glass, about shower doors, great. If you want to contact me about the Red Sox, great. Whatever it is. I'm just a dude. I'm just a guy.
I'll talk about whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold up that cool piece of digital printed glass that you had. Do you still have that near you?
Yeah, sure.
Hold that up. Show it off.
Yeah.
We talked about this on the last episode. And so I'll put a link to it in the show notes, but There's incredible work that David and HMI are doing to digitally print on glass. We talked about it as an alternative to ceramic frit. We talked about it well, maybe it isn't an alternative to that, but we talked about it as an alternative to frosted glass, right? So
Yes, absolutely.
there's a lot of cool stuff going on.
There are different parts of this. There is some simulated frosting, so it does give some opacity. But yeah, this was a really unique project where we were duplicating a real life tattoo that the client had a full sleeve tattoo of this kind of dragon koi motif, and we worked with the tattoo designer, the tattoo artist actually in Boston, Redemption Tattoo, to create a digital file of this tattoo that he had, inked on somebody, and then we in turn printed it on a shower enclosure. So it's just such a cool story, such a cool concept. But the technology that behind this digital printing on glass, and it is a ceramic frit, a digital ceramic frit, has just progressed so far, and it's really amazing what you can do with it.
That's so cool. I'm glad you're able to hold that up. So audio listeners didn't see that, obviously, right? So you have to go to the YouTube version of this show, and so you can see that. But very cool. And so, yeah, definitely recommend following David on LinkedIn, getting in touch with him for all things glass and shower enclosure. And again, if it's not specific to what he does, he knows somebody who does. So
absolutely.
David, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today about you and about people in general. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Evan. I appreciate it.
And that is a wrap for this episode. Peopleverse is powered by Tect and produced by Tect Media. For more episodes and access to the show notes, visit peopleverse.fm. To learn more about Tect, visit tect.com, where you can experience the shortest path from keyword search to local building product expertise. Please rate us 5 stars and leave us a review wherever you listen. And lastly, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues. Talk to you soon.